She'd received one letter, then nothing. She went to the church. She begged. She was told the boy had adjusted poorly and had been transferred elsewhere. No names, no contact, just assurances and pious condolences. But Rebecca had something none of the others did. Samuel's journal, hidden in his mattress. In it, the boy had written about the basement, about Margaret Wilson's rules, about rooms where children go and don't come back. He had drawn sketches, one of a man with coal-black gloves and a scar across his cheek. She showed Ellen the final entry. They told me I'm going to a place where the Bible is written in pain. Miss Coleman says I'm special, but I miss Mama. I don't think I'll ever see her again. Ellen read it twice. The words felt like a curse, like a scream that had travelled through time to claw at her throat. She asked Rebecca why she never came forward. The woman smiled, a bitter, broken smile. They said if I talked, my other children wouldn't be chosen, that they'd stay here, live safe, eat. Fear had become the currency of Cedar Creek, and the church, the sanctuary, was its mint. But Ellen now had something the town could never fully erase. A second witness, a grieving mother, a child's journal. Evidence, truth, not for the courts, not yet, but for the record. Because sometimes the only way to dismantle a holy lie is to preserve the pain long enough that it can't be ignored. They were building a fire, but this time it wouldn't go out. The network behind Cedar Creek's Sunday school horrors stretched far beyond that town's borders. Margaret Wilson's web of deception was no isolated scheme. It was a meticulously constructed empire of exploitation, thriving under the guise of salvation. By 1877, Ellen uncovered correspondence, hidden letters between Cedar Creek and Methodist churches scattered across Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. The letters spoke in code about special excursions and chosen children, terms designed to mask the transfer of innocent souls into a clandestine trafficking system. Railroads, those veins of 19th century America, carried more than coal and passengers. They transported children, children who never saw their homes again. Robert Hayes, the church board's silent benefactor, held stakes in the railroad companies. His influence ensured that no questions arose during shipments disguised as educational missions. The system was elegant in its cruelty, perfectly camouflaged beneath the smoke of progress and piety. But what haunted Ellen most wasn't just the scale. It was the psychology. Sarah Coleman's journal, a grotesque diary of manipulation, revealed the dark artistry behind the operation. Sarah's obsession was not merely profit, it was control. She documented how children were systematically broken down, emotionally severed from their families, conditioned to accept a new reality where obedience was their only currency. She studied fear and trust as a puppeteer studies strings. She crafted letters from children to parents, fabrications to lull suspicion, a paper illusion that kept families chained in hope. The church was not a place of refuge. It was a factory of obedience and cruelty. And the community? They drank from the same poisoned cup. Those who questioned were silenced or branded heretics. The comfortable majority chose denial. They cloaked themselves in sermons, baptisms, and charity events, while the abyss widened beneath their feet. This was not just a crime of individuals, it was the machinery of institutional corruption, and it thrived on your silence. By now, the weight of truth pressed hard on Ellen. She realized she was no longer just a witness. She had become a target. Letters arrived, unsigned and menacing, warning her to abandon her inquiries. Her room was vandalized. Friends whispered that she was disturbing the peace, a troublemaker threatening the fabric of their sacred community. But Ellen was relentless. She reached out to a clandestine journalist in Indianapolis, a man known only as Silas. He had a reputation for exposing corruption that powerful men wished to bury. Their correspondence was careful, encrypted with biblical allegories and coded phrases. Silas understood one thing well. This story wasn't just about missing children. It was about the very soul of America's religious institutions being complicit in darkness. Together, they pieced together the fragments of a network designed to manipulate faith itself, where religion became a weapon to mask abduction and exploitation. The Sunday school was a front, the church was a prison, and the children were collateral damage in a war for power disguised as salvation. But what Silas warned Ellen was the most terrifying revelation of all. This wasn't confined to Cedar Creek. This network had roots reaching to the highest echelons of religious and political power across the Midwest. The church leaders, businessmen, railroad magnates, they were all part of a pact. A dark covenant sealed in silence and blood, and those who dared to expose it were marked for destruction. Ellen's choice was clear: disappear into the shadows or become a beacon. She chose the latter, because some truths, no matter how dangerous, demand to be spoken. Dug, the more the shadows fought back. One evening, as she walked home beneath the dim gaslights, a group of men blocked her path, their faces hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats, their eyes cold and unyielding. "No more questions, Miss Hartwell," one said, voice low, edged with menace. "For your own good." But Ellen's courage was no longer fragile. She looked at them, and in that moment, the silent defiance of 40 vanished children seemed to rise behind her, fueling her resolve. She refused to be silenced. In the weeks that followed, she began secretly recording testimonies, whispers from broken families, hushed confessions from those who had helped but feared the church's wrath. One man, a former railroad worker, revealed how shipments labeled educational supplies were actually covers for transporting children bound for labor and worse in distant states. Another spoke of midnight meetings where church leaders negotiated the sale of children to industrialists and wealthy families, always under the guise of divine purpose. The horrifying truth was clear. This was a business masked by sanctimony, an unholy alliance of faith and greed. But amid the darkness, Ellen discovered a spark, a coded message buried in Sarah Coleman's journal, a cry for help hidden in theological jargon, a clue, a promise, a chance to expose the deepest parts of the network. It was a path that led beyond Cedar Creek, to a hidden ledger, a map, and names that could bring down the entire operation. But stepping into that abyss meant risking everything. Because once you follow the trail of forbidden knowledge, there is no turning back. The hidden ledger was unlike anything Ellen had imagined. Bound in cracked leather, stained with years of neglect, it detailed transactions, names, ages, destinations, prices. Each entry was a child, commodified and catalogued. The handwriting was precise, clinical, void of empathy. Margaret Wilson's signature appeared repeatedly, alongside those of influential figures: Robert Hayes, local ministers, even a few railroad executives. It was a chilling ledger of complicity. But the ledger also hinted at something more disturbing: a code within the entries, references to places with biblical names, Bethlehem, Zion, Golgotha, that turned out to be euphemisms for secret locations where children were hidden, sold, or worse. Ellen realized that the church wasn't just trafficking children. It was building a shadow empire of control, using religion as both shield and sword. She reached out to Silas with the ledger's details, but her messages were met with silence. It became clear that even allies could be compromised. One night, her boarding house was raided. The ledger vanished. Ellen was left with nothing but fragments of memories and a vow burned into her soul: to bring these buried truths to light, no matter the cost. She knew now that the evil was vast, systematic, and protected by layers of silence thicker than any stone. The children of Cedar Creek were never just victims. They were the first sparks illuminating a hidden darkness that still lurks beneath institutions you trust. As Ellen's revelations began to ripple beyond Cedar Creek, unsettling patterns emerged across the Midwest. Reports surfaced, whispers of children disappearing from Sunday schools, from orphanages, from missions cloaked in holy purpose. The educational excursions weren't unique. They were part of a sprawling network, branches extending like a cancer through communities that should have been safe. Families in neighboring towns recounted the same chilling stories. Children chosen for special missions, promises of learning and spiritual growth, followed by silence. In one Ohio town, a minister vanished after questioning his own church's missing children. In Illinois, a mother's letters from her daughter abruptly ceased after a supposed move to a Methodist seminary. The pattern was clear. The network was nationalizing. The church's sanctuaries were becoming factories of control and despair. Ellen, desperate and hunted, reached out to a secret society of investigative clergy and reformers, men who had begun to see the rot festering beneath the surface of American Protestantism. They called themselves the Watchers. Their mission was perilous, to expose the corruption embedded within the very fabric of religious institutions. Ellen's findings gave them proof, but it came with a warning. Those who wield faith as a weapon will defend their kingdom with blood and fire. Her allies urged caution, but Ellen's resolve only hardened. Because the children lost in Cedar Creek were not just forgotten, they were the first dominoes in a massacre of innocence, and the echoes of their silence demanded justice. The Watchers operated in shadows, but even they could not penetrate the fortress of lies built around Margaret Wilson's network without cost. Ellen became their beacon, their voice on the ground, risking everything to gather testimonies and document horrors buried beneath sermons and Sunday hymns. They uncovered ritualistic elements woven into the disappearances, baptisms conducted in secret chambers, prayers recited over children marked for selection, symbolic gestures masking sinister intentions. This was no accident. It was a cult of control, a machine built on spiritual terror and psychological domination. But the more they exposed, the more resistance they faced. Threats escalated from whispered warnings to violent confrontations. One watcher was found beaten near the railroad tracks, his last words a warning to cease the inquiry. Ellen received an anonymous parcel containing a child's shoe and a note, "We see you. Stop or suffer." Yet fear could not silence the truth, because in every letter, every hidden ledger, every broken family, there was a voice demanding